We all know about the Zoot Suit riots, a string of racially motivated hate crimes committed against Mexican American men at the height of World War II. But what about the women? What about the girls who were these guys' girlfriends, sisters, cousins, etc.? What were their stories during the Zoot Suit riots? Pachucas were a part of the Pachuco lifestyle, which was a lifestyle that rose to prominence amongst Mexican American youth. It was their way of reclaiming culture in their own terms. Because they were shut out of American culture for not being seen as fully American, they decided to do their own thing. And a part of that for the women was defying traditional gender norms by wearing the exact same outfits as the men. Oftentimes, they would don the same suits, the big jackets, the long pants, etc. that their men would. But even the girls who decided to go a more feminine route would wear their skirts above the knee, which at that time was seen as racy and hypersexual. But the Pachucas didn't care. During the day, they, along with other women, would go to the cannery factories and do their part for the war effort by canning food for the soldiers back home. They were trying to support their men who had also been drafted into the war. At night, they would go to dance halls and dance parties and dance with their men, where they would often dance the jitterbug and other styles that were associated with African American culture. This was also seen as defiant and unfeminine. It's important to note that Pachucas were also typically in community with Black Americans. It wasn't unusual for Black Americans and Mexican Americans to hang out together at dances, parties, dinners, etc., where they formed friendships and sometimes even romances. These romances were controversial because miscegenation laws forbid people of different races from marrying. However, Pachucas would defy these stereotypes as well. During World War II, women were encouraged to feminize as much as possible when they were in or out of the workplace. So even though they weren't allowed to wear their hair down, they were still encouraged to wear lipstick and small baubles like tiny earrings and things of that nature. Outside of that, the dress of the 1940s was still very feminine and made even more so with fancy hats and necklaces and pearls and etc. Although things were being rationed, such as materials for clothes, cosmetics, hair products, etc. The Pachucas kind of bucked this whole thing. They would still wear the victory rolls and they would still wear like their red lipstick and all that. But most of the time they were kind of flaunting the same things as the men, which made them be viewed as rebellious and traitorous to the American public. The Zoot Suiters were seen as being wasteful for wearing all of this material. Their suits were long and overly tailored. This was seen as being selfish because everybody was rationing and everybody was giving up extra fabric, so why weren't they? And the same thing with the women. Why weren't they being more feminine? This anti-Mexican sentiment resulted in the Zoot Suit riots, where many Mexican American men and their girlfriends were targeted by white soldiers who would ride out and brutally attack them. And to make matters worse, most of the time, it was the Mexican and Black men who were being arrested along with the Mexican and Black women who were accompanying them. Whether they were gang affiliated or not, Pachucas were often seen as gangster girls because of the over-policing of their community. The Pachucas were also the spiritual predecessors to Cholas, who would carry on their legacy of expressing pride in their Mexican American heritage through a very distinct style of dress, fashion, music, art, etc. To add to the history of Pachucas, I'd read somewhere that post all of this tragedy after World War II ended, They ended up holding some kind of beauty contest where they allowed Mexican women to enter, but they barred women who were too dark skinned. So, dark skinned Mexican American women were not allowed to enter into this contest. I don't know how true that is. I just know I remember reading it, and it's just interesting how even when America tries to do a show of good faith, they still let their colorism and biases get in the way. But I really think that the Pachuca style and their whole background is so interesting, and it gets lost in the fray when we talk about the Zoot Suit riots. So I just wanted to bring a little bit of attention and appreciation to it this Hispanic Heritage Month.